some other efforts. And I think that this is how to keep the connection sterile. He came up with this clamshell that could put iodine, and we would put it around the connection, and so the spike and the end of the bag would be and would be kept sterile. Subsequently, Baxter came up with a very kind of miniaturized clamshell on that. So I want to pay again the credit to Gabor Zellerman for all this work that he has done. That was the beginning of connectology and developments. He even came up with this connector. This window was open just to show this was the spike, and this is a membrane here. This is a cap that would keep it between exchanges full with iodine, sterilized. And in this way, the fingers cannot ever touch the spike. And Baxter made us solutions with this female part that has a membrane, so the patient would have to make this connection there. And there is a patient who's doing connection. Usually we try that in patients who had high infection rate, and even blind people were able to do it. And indeed, the infection rate with this device had decreased from 1 episode every 12 months, the ones that we were succeeding now, to 1 every 18 months. You remember the infection rate with the glass containers was 1 every 3 months. The plastic containers was every 11 to 12 months. So tremendous improvement, but still you needed further improvement. And then was this one that brought it to 1 every 18 months. Here is an effort to prevent the infection made by 3M company, that they produced this filter, bacteriostatic filter. So the fluid, after the patient was make the connection, would run into the patient through this filter. The problem was that on the way out could not go through the filter because you needed more free flow, so they had to bypass the filter. Did not have any effect. Baxter came through this other idea that you have this box, and before you make the connection between the spike and the bag, you expose them for a minute to ultraviolet light, which in vitro would sterilize and kill all bacteria 100%. But when actually they did a huge study, they could not prove any benefit in decreasing peritonitis. And this is the effort that Abbott came up, that this is they were calling sterile splicer. So you see here is the old tube, and this is the bag with the new tube, and they were aligned here, and then a metal knife with 500 degrees hot would kind of splice the two, would cut it, and then realign them, the old with the new, and because they were hot, they were being sealed together. So there was a new connection. So there was no hands involved at all. And theoretically, you would expect that the patient would never get peritonitis with that. Still, when they tried it, did not work. Another development, I'm moving now from the connectology to some other developments. From the very beginning of peritoneal dialysis, we found out that these patients lose a lot of proteins in the process of peritoneal dialysis, something between 6 to 8 grams of proteins, which might have been substantial. So we thought, why don't we replace the sugar with amino acids? So the patient, instead of receiving sugar, will receive the amino acids that are protein blocks, and they will just form proteins and will replace the proteins we're losing. I thought it was a great idea. It took, however, close to 20 years to convince the industry to come up with these solutions. And now the Baxter is making these Nutrineal amino acid solutions, to which I do not have any patent because I was so anxious to present to the community that this is a great idea, and it was presented in 1979 in the first meeting in Paris, and when the time came for a patent application, it was too late. Another area that peritoneal dialysis played a big role was the children. Children, to have vascular access is very difficult, and there is pediatric dialysis units are only limited, few in various countries. So if a family has a child with kidney disease, they have to move to live near the dialysis center. So in this way, with peritoneal dialysis, we could keep them alive until they get a kidney transplant. This is the first child that we did peritoneal dialysis. He had bilateral Wilms tumors. Both kidneys were removed, And so she was on peritoneal dialysis. There's her little bag, and the parents were helping her do the exchanges. Tremendous revolution about this. The children, there was a time that not, for the very small, imagine the pediatricians who could do dialysis very small, even the infants, which finding vessels and doing hemodialysis would be very difficult. So 25 to 50% of these very small children, or children who go to school, can do peritoneal dialysis at home. Now that was because of that, my only chance to come near royalty is when I was invited with our pediatric nephrologist, Dr. Bill Valve, to go to treat the niece of the Sultan of Brunei. So here we are in Brunei with the Sultan. His niece had acute renal failure, and we had to bring her to Toronto to train the nurses and the doctors and go back on peritoneal dialysis. I want to pay credit to Dr. Stephen Vass, who is a prominent international authority in microbiology, and he set the principles of treating peritonitis. He was behind the 4 ad hoc committees that produced recommendations for treatment of peritonitis and have been used extensively throughout the world.